My guests today need no introduction. These are friends of the shows. You know them very well, and you know their show. And they were recently suspended by YouTube. So please welcome the Convo Couch to the show, Pasta and Fiorella of the Convo Couch. So guys, you were just suspended from YouTube. In the words of a favorite book of all of ours, written by our favorite contemporary philosopher, Hillary Clinton, what happened?
Well, I'll let Fiorella explain that, but first I'd like to wish you a good morrow.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Well, so we got suspended reportedly for doing a story when Johnny Investigation brought up Wayfarer, and all we did was
wait a second. It's Johnny Investigation, Johnny Sue.
Yeah.
How many nicknames?
Down here,
We got to roll back the
Dive.
nicknames a little bit. He has like 24 nicknames at this point.
He does.
You can thank Pasta for that.
No. I love it. I love it. Which is because of it. I'm like, well, is Johnny Investigation a different dude? You know, like occasionally it's like you get thrown off a little bit and you got to clarify. You're like, wait, is that a different guy? I hope Johnny took my advice and used that picture of him standing in front of the police as his dating profile. I never got to follow up on that with him. But anyway,
it worked. It was good advice. It worked.
I knew it was going to work. All right. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, we digressed. But yeah, Johnny went on a deep dive, and our sister actually had brought up the story of the Wayfarer, because it was these kids on TikTok talking about, hey, there's cabinets that cost $14,000. Why is that? And so Johnny just went on there and showed the pictures of the cabinets, did some research on how much these industrial cabinets cost, and he was like, this is strange. And like he was like, oh look, the cabinets, some of them are named after these kids that have been missing. And then he brought up the FBI files regarding the symbolism and things, but those were FBI files that anybody could get. And there were no assertions made, right? We made zero assertions. We didn't say, oh, this is entirely true. This is how this happens, blah, blah, blah. We simply mentioned it. And it was a small part of our big show, and it was clipped up. And 3 months later, we get not just a strike for it, but we get suspended for a week for it. And this wasn't the first time, Ron. If you recall, when we did the primary coverage that whole day when Pasta was here.
You were on that show
with
Ron.
Nico.
Yeah.
You were on it. I was on the ground reporting from the polling locations. They got that whole stream taken down as well. That was a warning. We fought it, and it didn't count as a strike. It was just a warning after the fact. Yeah. But they were able to take the stream down and claim that we were. What was the claim? That
that one was just not abiding by the community guidelines. The Wayfarer one from 3 months ago was harassment and cyberbullying.
Right.
Was the excuse. So it's the two areas they dinged us. You can't talk about pedophilia. No. And you can't talk about the elections. I'm sorry, Faith.
And I'm just going to say, we didn't even strictly talk about pedophilia. We simply mentioned that the Wayfarer scandal wasn't, the Wayfarer thing was weird. And then we brought up the FBI files on the pedophilia when we were discussing it, because they were FBI, and we said, oh, well, this is interesting. This is what the symbolism is. This is what these people use. And I've talked about it before regarding Backstage, regarding other sites on the internet, when pedophiles are looking for kids, they do use certain cryptic language, and that's a fact. Everybody knows that. So but the reasons were cyberbullying and harassment. So it was really weird to us that they used that as an excuse. And now we're seeing, Ron, multiple channels get taken down, like The Last American Vagabond was recently taken down, and he does deep dives onto things like COVID, a lot of other issues, the same pedophilia, foreign policy, just different things. And they're very informative, and it's really scary to see that in the last 5 days or so, they have actually cracked down hard on YouTube in order to protect Joe Biden, is what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
I think it goes even deeper than that. And this goes into the theme that we keep coming back to, that we've been coming back to for another number of years now. What are the Silicon Valley tech people? How are they qualified to determine what is and isn't real news? What is and isn't free speech? And, there's a lot of crazy stuff that people post on the internet, sure. But the solution to bad speech is good speech. And
More speech,
let
yeah.
people post whatever they want and have a different viewpoint, have another alternative, have another analysis. And you're certainly treading on dangerous territory when people are doing independent investigations, pointing to information that is publicly available, making these connections, and that is deemed uncouth. And then the other, for instance, you brought up, which is the elections, that goes into, I mean, I think what really is going on there is this idea that political speech in the form of debates is somehow the private property of the cable news companies, which is morally disgusting. And by the way, textbook fascism. This idea that this isn't information for the people. This is political information in a society that's supposed to be civically engaged. You're supposed to be, we're supposed to be a democracy. That's what we're told. The idea that a debate between people running for office is somehow the property of privately owned corporations, who, by the way, are insanely compromised, and that's a whole different topic that we could go down. It is nothing short of criminal. Yet you had all these online entities very willing to carry that out. Oh, you're commentating on this, which, by the way, falls under the fair use law. Commentating for the purposes of education, for the purposes of news and information, that is right in the fair use laws. You don't need a frickin' law degree to be able to decipher that stuff. It's right frickin' there. And you're going to take people down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were part of that whole situation too. When we, we did those debates, and the second one we did, they took us down. They stopped us right in our tracks. We cited the fair use. They gave us our channel back. But it really is crazy. But the thing that really bothers me right now too, as well, is that, we're all lefties over here. I mean, I consider you guys even further left than me, but a lot of people on the left are cheering on this censorship because they think it's a mark or a ding against Donald Trump, and it's not. And we were screaming back when Alex Jones got the platform, like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is no bueno. If they take off Alex Jones, they'll take us off us next, and then they'll take you off. And we're seeing stuff like that. We have a friend who has a Bernie Sanders page, thousands of followers. They just deplatformed him and took him down for a little while. Why? They don't even give you an answer. So we are really in some scary, scary times. But I really wish we can get some of these progressives on the left. There's a group of us, and I think a lot of us understand what's going on because we work in independent media. But there's a bunch of people over on the left that are following the AOCs, the Squad, and the Bernies, and they're cheering on this censorship. We somehow got to get them, shake them, and get them back our way. So we have a lot of work to do, and hopefully we'll stay up long enough before they delete our channel to do so.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird when you see people cheer on. I mean, the weirdest thing, and this is kind of a callback to the Alex Jones things, is when, and I think this kind of goes to the theme that I talk a lot about on this show. We are a society of people raised on comic books where there's always a good guy and a bad guy. And it's like when you have the message of actually there's only bad guys involved here, that's sometimes a very bitter pill for people to swallow. Like, well, Alex Jones is a bad guy and they deplatformed him. Like, yeah, I don't like Alex Jones either, but unless he is blatantly violating free speech laws, which I don't know if he did or didn't, but it's not my place to determine that. It's a constitutional lawyer's place to determine that. And it's not some big tech, Silicon Valley guy's place to determine that. How are they qualified to determine that? Unless free speech laws have been violated, nobody should ever be deplatformed under any circumstance. It doesn't matter. So, and then you would see people across the political spectrum saying stuff like, well, they're a private company. They can do whatever they want. And it's like, well, gee, that's weird. That's very weird seeing a lefty say something like that.
I know.
It's very weird. That's very backwards. And furthermore, all that is evident of that doesn't mean, okay, case closed. What it does mean is that we are in a situation where technology has passed up the law. We don't have law that is on the same level as where technology has gotten. It has passed up the law. We're not there yet. So the solution to that is to make good laws, not just be like, well, they're a private company, so tough shit. Well, what are you going to do when they get, it's that famous meme that we've all seen. First, they came for the journalists. Well, and I don't know what happened after that because there was nowhere was telling me what was going on.
Well, they're a private
great
company,
meme.
but they're not. I mean, either YouTube is going to be a platform that is non-biased, or they're going to be the author or the producer that decides what is and what isn't. They can't be both. And that's what people miss with that argument. They also miss the fact that there's an incestuous relationship between these big social media platforms like YouTube and Twitter and the establishment. I mean, half of these people have worked on campaigns for either Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, or somehow been involved in the political process. How is Susan Wojcicki, who donated $50,000 to the Hillary Clinton campaign fund, the Victory Fund, how is she not going to be biased in her assessment of whether what YouTubers say is real or isn't real news, if she has those to me conflicts of interest in her? Like, there's no way to even argue that. Like, there should not be anybody but the people deciding what is free speech and what isn't. And I think any sort of excuse to use the right as we got to get rid of QAnon because they're conspiracy theorists is really an excuse. I mean, ultimately I think the establishment is here to take down any voices that pretty much expose their lies. You could point to the Hunter Biden and Burisma thing, but you could also point to anything regarding Russiagate. If we're talking about real conspiracy theories, Russiagate was a conspiracy theory that has been presented as fact continuously throughout the last 3 years. Yet even when we have the classified the proof that it's not, it's still,
they're still doing it.
They're
still doing it. I mean, Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper are still going off the whole, Russia, now it's even so, it's to the point of where it's so absurd where they're saying the information coming back on Hunter Biden from Giuliani might have been
Russia. Yeah.
Come on. I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, now, I mean, they just don't even point to any shred of remote evidence. They just say the buzzword because, and that is what propaganda is supposed to do. I mean, that's just what it's supposed to do. You repeat something enough, which I mean, 3 years is actually a conservative time frame as far as, I mean, it was more than 3 years where it was just nonstop, and it was a conspiracy theory. And then, but now that they can just, whenever there's something, it's, that's Russia. This is probably Russia doing this. This is probably Russia doing that. They don't even need to have a remote shred of anything resembling evidence. And it's one of those things, I think the way I've summed it up at this point to just sort of like, just kind of squash it out right away. Russiagate is the establishment, the Democratic establishment's version of voter fraud. And what I mean by that is you always see the right talking about voter fraud. Like it's this like, oh man, voter fraud. And what's really going on in our elections? We know what's really going on. Blatant voter suppression, blatant purging of the rolls, super delegates, cheat apps, gerrymandering, the Electoral College, the list goes on and on. We could list them all frickin' hour. That's what's really going on in our elections. Has voter fraud happened a small handful of times in the history of ever? Yeah, it has. Is that a bad thing? Sure, you shouldn't do that. That's wrong. But when you're listing what's going on in our elections, is it even remotely an issue? No, it absolutely isn't. Did Russia spread some memes for the sake of spamming people? Yeah, that happened. Did it affect somebody's vote? I don't see how any reasonable person would see Bernie Sanders with abs painted as a rainbow, or Jesus trying to help you stop masturbating, and would think, I'm going to go vote for this candidate over this other one now. I don't see how any rational person would do that. That makes zero sense to me. Sounds a little freaking insane that a bunch of memes, half of them which were published after the 2016 election anyway, somehow influenced people's votes. Did it happen? Yeah, I mean, it did happen. Did Putin prefer Trump over Hillary? Yeah, he did. He also preferred Obama when Obama was running. Is Putin a good guy? No. How is that relevant, though? Like, what does that have to do? So, again, this is like their voter fraud. This is the, hey, look over here. Look at this distraction instead of looking at what's really going on in our elections. And what really goes on in our elections, if we want to sum it up in one sentence, they do everything they can to make sure that the status quo does not get shifted at all. And what happens is we have a two-party duopoly that relies on each other. So the Democrats do everything they can to make sure the establishment candidate gets in during the primary. And then during the general, usually a lot of the foul play falls upon Republicans because you know who's really going to uphold Wall Street with no strings attached? It's going to be the Republican because they don't even need to play pretend. That's what really goes on in our elections.
Yeah. I'd take it a step further, too, as well. I think the Democrats are trying to use the cover of COVID to stuff the ballot box themselves. And people should be saying election fraud, not voter fraud, because it is simply a cartel that cheats in its own territory. Election rigging is a bipartisan practice. However, the Republicans do what they can do to sell the narrative. When they say voter fraud, that's a signal to the people who are saying, well, you know, how are all these immigrants that shouldn't be able to vote and these fellas and that shouldn't have to be vote, get ready to vote? You know what I'm saying? So they use those tactics to sell it. Almost like when you hear those tactics like how Trump stole the 2020 election. Well, excuse me, you can't steal the election when the Democrats already stole it from Bernie Sanders in the primary. So too late for that. You know what I'm saying? It's like the cheaters calling out the other cheaters. And I also want to say too, as well, Putin's not a great guy. He's an amazing guy. He sent us a case of vodka with our last paycheck. So please take it easy on Putin. I made him a Putinesca omelet for his birthday. But yeah, Ron, I mean, it is. I mean, in the whole situation too, with this election, it's going to be scary because it seems like no matter what, we can't get balls and strikes, that the Democrats are going to try to cheat. They didn't try to cheat as much last time, and Hillary got beat by Trump. So I think they have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. But at the end of the day, you know who loses? We lose. The people lose, no matter what. And that's what really, really stinks.
See, I don't think the Democrats care that much what happens in a general. I mean, I don't think their first priority is winning. And when I say Democrat, I mean the establishment. I don't mean the people.
Yeah.
I
Down
mean
ballot candidates they care for.
Well, yeah, sure. They care for that.
They don't want those progressives getting in,
So. They don't want the progressives getting in. That's why, I mean, they cheat as much as they can in the primary. And then, yeah, if one of them makes it through to the general, they'll try to do everything they can there. But as far as, I mean, whether Trump wins or not, their gravy train keeps rolling hard, and it rolls even harder if he wins again.
Yeah. I think they want Kamala, though. I think they really do want. Deep down inside, I think the Democrats want to find a way. I think the Obama wing of the Democratic Party is now taking more power away from the Clintons as we speak. I really do feel that way. Reason why Obama whipped the foam to get Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar try to drop out. But I really do think, and he's said it before, I think they want to get Kamala through there. So I think they might try to cheat this election. And on another note, Ron, I've talked about it with Graham too as well. Sometimes I think they want to lose. That's how awful they are at times, that they're putting forth the worst candidate, and he keeps on stumbling over his words and whatnot.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they're not concerned. I mean, if Trump wins again, the gravy train is going to be. I mean, if Trump wins again, Nancy Pelosi will not be able to drive if Trump wins again for at least a couple days, because you know how in cartoons sometimes like dollar signs just flash in somebody's eyes. That's what will happen to her. If Trump wins, she'll just be like, oh my God, the dollar signs will be flashing so much in her eyes. She won't be able to drive a vehicle. It'd be dangerous for her. She'll be like, I didn't know that was a stop sign. I just saw it as a dollar sign. That's all I see in front of me. What's going on? So that's what I'm saying.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your